I'm Dale Waxler, and I have spent the majority of the past 47 years in my shop building and rebuilding 2- and 4-wheel artifacts for the sake of history. My building is full and my shop is overflowing with projects so rich in history, they are screaming at my conscience every day for new life. Yeah! Now follow me through the evolution of what I call real school, and we'll bring these bikes back to life. Last time you saw this motor, a couple days ago, didn't look like this. I had the crank spinning, but probably about 8 hours as figured. I got all the timing gears arranged and all the cams set up. This is a little bit tougher than I thought. One of the main tools at the Wheels Through Time Museum is a hammer. I'll be telling you why I put that piston on in just a little while, but it's interesting when you look at a motor like this, and we had talked about what a low hour this machine is, the whole bike, and I think I figured out maybe why they quit on it, but the other discovery that I found was on the cylinders, and this is what we're going to be doing tonight. These are the original cylinders. The last time you saw them, they were sitting on the shelf over there, waiting for this day, and I pulled the cylinders down. I've given them a pretty quick inspection. The bores look real clean on both cylinders. It'll take a light hone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wire wheel some of this rust off, hone the cylinders out, then we're going to come back and lap in the valves, check the valve seating, then I'm going to put this cylinder on that piston, kind of see where that piston's going to end up as far as the height. That tells me what the heads are going to be like. Anyway, that's a long story. But what I wanted to show you is right here on this cylinder. And remember, the bike's in 1946. They started making this casting for the cylinder in 1939, and for most of the years they put the date they made the casting. In other words, when the hot iron was poured into the mold. And this iron was poured in the mold about a month and a half before Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 1941. The casting date is exactly 10/3/1941. So within a few months, America was at war, and these rough castings very likely sat on a shelf at Harley-Davidson until after the war, when they were machined and put on 1946 WR 5724. Very important number. Another thing I discovered on this engine during the assembly and the inspection process, and this is very much like the bikes right upstairs at Wheels Through Time, very all low mileage machines, low hour machines are what I've collected. But if you look right here on the lifter post, the part that lifts the valve, that would be this function right here. That takes a lot of strain. Every time that valve lifter comes up and hits that valve, this thing is turning 6, 7, 8,000 RPMs. This is going to wear very fast. This one has very little wear, just like the bikes upstairs. What I'm going to do right now is get this cylinder over to the wire wheel, get it cleaned up, get it honed out, and we'll get some more testing done on this bike. About 30 seconds on the wire wheel. Also, I really believe these cylinders have not been painted since they were new in 1946. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm taking the rust off the flange, gonna hone the cylinders out, then we're gonna give them a bath, no kidding, a bath, and we'll see just how good this original paint is. Hey, before I show you what we did and how great this cylinder cleaned up, I'm going to give you a little lesson on valve springs and really what makes a WR engine run. You'll notice 2 valve springs. The one in my right hand is a standard Harley 45 valve spring. This is a WR valve spring. Look at this. The standard valve spring is actually taller. Big deal. Doesn't have anything to do with how to make that engine spin. So here's what I want you to check out. When you put the WR valve spring in the valve spring compressor and bring it down to 1 3/4 inches right there. At 1 3/4 inches, you're at 102 pounds of pressure. When I put in the stock valve spring and bring it to 1.75 inches, exactly the same, it's only 65 pounds of valve spring pressure. So the WR valve is 30% stronger, and that what makes the WR spin like a rocket. By the way, the valve spring compressor tester came from the famous Leonard Andres, and all the valve springs of all the racers, Cal Rayborn, Brad Andres, all those engines, that's his tool. I love this thing. So come on over here, let me show you what we did on the cylinders. You won't believe this. This cylinder came out so good. Look at the crosshatch, look how clean that is, not a scratch, I'm loving it. So here's what I've done now. I've checked the valve springs. I've also lapped the valves, so the valves have a perfect seat. Listen to that, listen. That's what you want. Now you can be very primitive. You can put water or gasoline, or you can just go like this. If it'll hold air, it's good. So I just tested one. That was the intake. Here's the exhaust. What a funny way to test, huh? Perfect. So the next step is to place the cylinder on the crankcase. Now, this is not the permanent deal. This is just a function of putting this engine together, kind of mocking this engine up. You're gonna see this entire engine go together before your very eyes all at one time, from the crankshaft to the crankcases to the cams to the lifters to the pistons, the rings, the cylinders, and the heads, all at one time. That'll be on the next episode. But what I want to do right now is I want to see where that piston comes up when you turn the engine over. And you'll notice the piston is about 30 thousandths of an inch from the top. A WR uses no head gasket, so the head firmly plants itself down on this cylinder and is flat across this surface. I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. So there's only about 20 thousandths of an inch of space left between the piston and the top of the head. You have the chamber over here, that's where your compression comes from, and this piston's gonna work just fine. The other thing I thought would be fun to do would be to put the stock valves in it, the original valves, and turn the engine over. And what I'm kind of doing, which is might sound weird, but I'm kind of detectiving, and what I can determine is the last time this engine was run, these valves right now are at perfect adjustment. It's just kind of unbelievable. So whenever I have a moment like this, I usually say I've had enough for the day. This engine couldn't be going any better. The valves are great, the cylinder's great, and that's all the real school for right now. Next week, you're gonna see this engine go together before your bare eyes. After that, this thing will be running. Probably one of the most provocative machines that Harley-Davidson ever built, the one of the most romantic racing bikes that Harley ever built, was the Harley 750 WR. Its roots started actually before World War II, but the Harley WR didn't really gain traction until after World War II. And this was the day when the boys came home from World War II, roaring to race those bikes on the dirt tracks, flat tracks, road races all over the country. Harley had a very difficult time responding to the demand, and only about 600 of those machines were ever built from 1941 to 1952. Here at Wheels Through Time, I have one of the most dramatic collections of WRs anywhere in the world. I spent over 40 years building and collecting these rare machines. Every one of the 30-some machines are in prime condition, easily started, easily running, and it's really a great piece of pride here at Wheels Through Time to share the history of American dirt track racing from that era.